The issue of mountaintop removal mining is just as urgent today as it was when we first talked about it on Ring of Fire 7 years ago. The difference today is that most of the mountains in the communities along the Appalachia have been blown up and mined for every piece of coal that is lying beneath it. As communities continue to fight coal giants like Massey Energy, they're continuously faced with devastation that these energy companies have left in their backyards, and a campaign of intimidation and sometimes violence by the industry. Joining me now is Bill Haney, director of the new documentary, The Last Mountain, which tells the story of one community's fight against the coal industry. And welcome to the show, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
Bill has been around this space for a long, long time. You actually got your start, Bill, designing pollution removal scrubbers for coal-burning power plants back when you were a freshman at Harvard.
You know, one of the challenges with most forms of pollution control, if you're not careful, and you see this throughout the coal industry and the utility industry, is that the way they clean up air pollution is to make a solid waste. So a classic scrubber, you know, you put an alkali material through it, and you make a big sludge and you dump it on the ground. And then if you burn it, then you create air pollution. And if you try to clean it some other way, you dump it in the water because the law of conservation of matter says you can't make these things go away. The systems that I've mostly been interested in, in that case that I invented, were designed to stop that and to create new molecules. So we invented a system for introducing NH3 into the flue gas of a power plant or a stationary diesel engine or even a car. Honda's putting them on cars now. And the NH3 would react with NO2 to form nitrogen gas, which is inert and, you know, as you know, 76% of the atmosphere around us, and water. You know, we were lucky ultimately to get it to work and to get a couple of big power plants to build it, and that was the beginning of putting them all over the world.
So you were conscious from the beginning about the cost that coal imposes on the greater community that it was able to externalize. But tell us about your experience with Appalachia, because the story of this movie is really a human story. It's about the communities that are being trampled by the coal industry. One of the great mantras of the coal industry is that, well, we're bringing prosperity to Appalachia, to the coal fields. But actually, when you look at the statistics and when you look at what's happening on the ground, my father used to say West Virginia was the richest state in the country because of the value of the resources under the ground in the state. But actually, it's got the 49th poorest population. And the reason for that is that resources are not owned by the people who live in Appalachia by and large. They're owned by Wall Street, by big companies that are out-of-state companies that had came in back in the 1880s with a bunch of hustlers and con men and what they called landsmen, and purchased the mineral rights from the people in the state. And then corrupt courts and corrupted legislatures allowed them to actually knock down the mountains and the homes and everything else in their way, rivers, streams, etc., in order to get at that coal. What got you interested in it?
I think that several things. First, you know, I've long seen that the core pain of environmental destruction is actually people. I mean, this isn't about preserving the planet for 2 billion years from now. This is really about devastation that hurts our fellow citizens day in and day out, and actually in a slow way is poisoning most of us. The coal industry has, as far as I can tell, certainly their spokesperson in Appalachia, you know, has two basic stories. Basic story number one, coal is what keeps the lights on. And the second story is employment. But what I discovered through the 3-year process was that neither really is an accurate representation of the truth. Is that, you know, as once upon a time I believed in technology could improve things, so have we discovered that, in fact, there's many different ways to keep the lights on, as it were, and lots of them don't require the kind of horrific obliteration of our national heritage and biological ecosystems that coal does. And coal is a source of great employment in the heartland of Appalachia, you know, is only partially true. That by using the explosives that we highlight in our movie and the mechanization tools that have become so popular, most of the employment has been eliminated. So that, if there were 150,000 employees in the coal industry in West Virginia 50 years ago, today there's 10% of that, or 15,000. And so, we are doing a scientific experiment with the only one of 100 billion planets we've discovered in the known universe that sustain human life. And we're doing it to feed the profits of a very small number of people who bonus a very small number of their executives with much of the profits. It makes no sense, and it would only happen if it's concealed. And as you know, this story has been hidden in Appalachia for some time.
Well, one of the mantras of the coal industry is, well, we bring prosperity to the state, and we bring jobs to the state. But in fact, as you point out, the number of jobs are very, very small. 9 out of 10 mining jobs have disappeared, and yet the amount of coal being taken out of West Virginia since the 1960s has doubled. So the profits, which at least some of those profits back in the 60s when my father was fighting strip mining in Appalachia, used to be left in the state for salaries and pensions and reinvestment in the community. Virtually all of it flows directly up to Wall Street now. And, the miners, some of the ones that are left, many of whom are not West Virginian at all, because Massey Coal, for example, doesn't like to hire West Virginians because they have a union culture there. So they advertise in Myrtle Beach and USA Today and the Atlanta Constitution. And they bring in the miners, they cut down a mountain, it takes them 5 to 8 years, and then they move them to another mountain. And they're not really members, in many cases, of those communities. But it's not environmental laws, as some of those miners would have you believe, that are impacting or reducing the jobs. It's a ruthless, merciless, systematic strategy by the coal industry, particularly Massey Coal, over the past 20 years to eliminate jobs and replace them with explosives and giant machinery.
And the fact that so much of what's been happening in America can be seen through this prism, that the same notion of big corporations kind of, wreaking havoc on the lives of many of us. And, if things go well, they get the bonuses, as you point out, and if things go badly, we hold the bag. That idea, which seems so antithetical to the whole notion of America, is going on. We saw the banks do it not very long ago, and they're right back at it right now. And now we're watching, the natural resource giants do it all across America, but this story in Appalachia is particularly compelling.
The only way that they can function, their business plan, is to break the law and then to figure out ways to get away with it by dismantling, by subverting democracy, by dismantling the government agencies that are supposed to protect us from pollution, and by hiding what they're doing, by destroying transparency in government, and by corrupting public officials. And that's one of the great things about this movie, is it just shows the widespread corruption of virtually every relevant official in the state of West Virginia. Power the size of a Hiroshima bomb once a week.
They just keep this process up until they literally reduce the mountain to rubble.
Coal River Mountain is our last great mountain that hasn't been blasted to ashes.
Massey Coal, the single most destructive coal mining company in history.
That's your coal dust.
And that's what the inside of the kids' lungs are going to look like.
Massey Hero!
People have had enough, and they're standing up to the coal company.
The fight over Coal River Mountain is a fight about democracy.
Robert Kennedy Jr. is lending his voice.
How can Massey Coal have 60,000 violations and nobody in the state came and stopped them?
We want our kids in a safe new school.
National average for brain tumor is 1 in 100,000, and we had 6 that lived side by side. The only thing we have in common is the fact that we all have well water.
Mountaintop coal mining is literally threatening the water supplies of tens of millions of people.
We live in a very intelligent country that has the ability to create energy without blowing up mountains.
We're looking at a proposal now to construct a wind farm in Coal River Mountain.
That's our last mountain. That's the last one we have.
Corporations do not want democracy. They want profits.
They're bound and determined to knock the mountain down. We're bound and determined to stop it.
It's either them or Massey, and Massey's been winning for a long time.
Coal is mean, coal's cruel, and coal kills. The American people need to find their position. You're connected to coal, whether you realize it or not. Everybody's connected to this, and everybody's causing it, and everybody's allowing it.
Let them hear your voice in that building back there!
If the American people could see it, there'd be a revolution in this country.